Hello everyone and welcome to another Kaplan Instagram Live. My name's Stuart Pedley-Smith. I'm Kaplan's Head of Learning, and let me give you a few pointers as to what's happening today. So this is, I can't think how many of these that we've done now. We had a week off last week. I'm very pleased to say that I'm joined by Dr Nurmazilah, who is the president of the Malaysian Institute of Accountants, and I'm just looking to connect Dr Nur as we are now. I'll come to Dr Nur in a minute as soon as she joins, but just to give you a little bit of background if it's the first time that you've seen this. So we are looking at doing just a short 30-minute interview with really interesting people. The themes, as ever, are around not wasting time, not wasting the valuable time that students have right now. Secondly, study tips and hints in lockdown, trying to find out what people are doing and sharing ideas. And the third part is a positive attitude, because if you haven't got a positive attitude, and this covers the whole mental well-being, and for people who followed the series, we've had experts on positive psychology and well-being as a subject itself. If you haven't got a really positive sort of outset on things, studying doesn't work very well. It's very hard, you know. Studying's about the connection between learning. It's a brain-driven process. So I can see Dr Nur is on. Dr Nur, welcome to Kaplan Instagram Live.
Good morning, Stuart. And it is actually afternoon in Malaysia, and I'm pleased to join you in this Instagram Live.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. For those joining us at 9 o'clock in the UK, because we'll have people from both the UK and Malaysia. So it's 9 o'clock, and I think it's 4 o'clock. Coming up for afternoon tea out there, Dr.
Yeah.
Which you've allowed us to call us. Now, we've got 30 minutes and it will absolutely fly. Any questions, people, please feel free to include them. My first question is around what's the situation for students out in Malaysia. Just by way of background for Malaysian students logging on, in the UK, all universities are off campus. Our primary schools have kind of gone back with a mixed response. Some have gone back and some haven't. So there's been a bit of go, no go stall there. But all students studying professional exams are remotely. They're either studying using a traditional distance learning. The vast majority are using some form of online, be it asynchronous, i.e. a live recording, as we're talking now, or asynchronous. Dr. Nur, what's happening in Malaysia? Share some thoughts as to how students are studying out there.
Yeah, so Stuart, in Malaysia, we had the lockdown introduced by the government sometime in March. So it has been about 84 days. And in fact, today is the first day where the lockdown, or what we call movement control order, is relaxed. So what it means is that for the past 84 days, we can only go out for some essential services, and which means that those in education, the students, whether they are on higher learning or professional exams, and even the primary school children, they're actually learning from home. So universities are closed, and I think it won't be open until some time when the government has decided on what would be the procedures for reopening and what are the safeguards that need to be adhered to. So effectively, everyone, all students, from probably age 5 and above up to 22, those are also learning part-time. They're actually learning from home or learning from remote technology. So this is really interesting, and I think what we call unprecedented, but it's a new way of learning that everyone is actually adapting.
And how, just as a I suppose a technology question, but also perhaps a mental well-being and attitude question. So given that students, because we, and just focusing perhaps now the area that we both know a little bit more about, which is professional examinations. So people, one day we're in a classroom and we're actually lifted and stuck into an online environment. What's been the general response of students? Have they just accepted it as a new norm? Have they challenged it? Have they, and how's the technology working? Is internet connection good out there? There's certainly areas that you can, not so easy for everybody.
So obviously there are a few challenges. First, as you mentioned, the connectivity, the internet connectivity, but the government is kind enough to give like 1 gigabyte free internet, for every home, for everybody who has a mobile, and that I think it really helps students to get connections and to probably join their Google Classroom or Google Meet and any other platforms. So basically everyone is one thing good. I think the opportunity is that everyone is getting used to this online platform, and they are actually learning the ropes in getting the best benefit from the online platform. But the other thing, I suppose, students always being vibrant, especially students at teenagers, and with this remote learning, you're probably missing your peers, you miss your friends, you miss the hilarious discussions, and that potentially will cause some loneliness. You probably feel a bit of demotivation because your peers are not around you, and I think those are probably some challenges. But I suppose over time, students are tend to adapt and getting used to that, and they probably use the WhatsApp or FaceTime more than ever, so that they get connections with your friends and get to chat using FaceTime or WhatsApp call and things like that. So students being vibrant, being young, they find ways, how to get connected with your friends. So it's, yes.
Yeah, no, they do, don't they? Yeah. We sometimes, technology has become a real advantage. There was a moment in time when I think we would be talking about technology and Twitter and comments on Twitter and things as a bad thing, but actually in these times it allows students, I suppose, to connect. What's the situation with the exams out there, Dr. Nur? Are there any centres open to physically sit exams, or is it everything about remote proctoring? How are students getting on with it?
Yeah, actually in Malaysia, the education centres are not allowed to open yet. So whatever exams that are being delivered, those all exams are actually done online. And so it's also a new way of students' assessment. And perhaps I think many of those educators, they also assign them with different types of learning assessments, not probably just exams, but they do give some sort of formative assessment like essays and things like that. So it is also changing the way assessments are being delivered. And but I think interesting because this is also the time where I think students can actually relook in terms of their study plan. So despite not having their peers or not having the lecturers or the teachers, but they can start to plan their own study plan. They can start to plan their own schedule in terms of the knowledge and their learning activities. So it does need to have a bit of or more understanding in terms of time management, so that their times are well used, so to speak.
Yeah. We've spoken to CIMA and we've spoken to ICAW. We talked 2 weeks ago now about how the professional bodies are looking to use sort of, I suppose, not so much the online assessment per se, i.e. sitting at home, the part of it, but certainly embedding software within the platform, so different testing. We spoke to Clancy from SEMA, who explained everything about how the remote proctoring and dealing with student concerns as to how it works. Because it's one thing, isn't it, Dr. No, turning up an exam centre where maybe you've studied. It's a very different learning, well, it's a very different assessment experience just logging on from your own home, in that the technology doesn't fail, that, you know, that you press the right button and have to pass the exam at the end of the day. So it's a very different world, and very quickly a very different world.
Indeed, indeed. And I think we all have to adapt to this new way of assessment and what we call a new norm, obviously.
Yeah. And another question for you, Doctor. What's have students come to MIA, or even if you had sort of personal messages from students asking about their concerns? Is there anything in particular that they are really worried about? Are they asking about when things will go back to normal? Are they saying, what sort of concerns have students been coming with?
Yep. So there are a few questions that we receive as well on different areas. For example, most of those in terms of, you know, the work opportunities, and they are quite aware that the businesses are having challenges as well, and in restoring confidence of the customers and bouncing back the economy. So one of the questions is whether are there still job opportunities in the area of accounting and finance. So that's one of the major questions that we receive. So obviously you want the answer to that, Stuart. Yeah. So on that part, we've done, you know, some market analysis as well. So in terms of job openings, we can still see that the job openings in accounting and finance are still around. And as you know, the professional services, especially the firms, you know, they're still doing all their services online. Many of the firms have switched to online services, and they still require staff. They require new talent, and this is where I think the recruitment are still ongoing. And the other interesting thing, in Malaysia, the government has just announced what they call packages to stimulate the economy for recovery. And one of the you know, the package that is offered by the government is where any employer that employed, you know, graduates, you know, they will be given some sort of grants or assistance in terms of motivating them to recruit the graduates. Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose the other thing that I suppose we've been talking about really is the idea that so the themes of this, as you know, sort of one of the things is for students not to waste the time that they've got now. It's very easy with sometimes uncertainty about an exam, and to actually sort of go, oh good, I can sit back, I can have a little bit of a break, and then when something happens, I'll carry on. But one of the things that you know, no country is going to come out, I don't think, of, you know, post-COVID and be, you know, really happy. But one of the differentiators in the job market is a qualification, and if there are less, you know, you've got more students to choose from, or you've got more possible employees for jobs, and we've seen this before back in the 80s with recessions. Then effectively employers get a better quality of candidate for their money to a certain extent. And, you know, if two candidates go for a job and one's got a professional qualification and the other one hasn't, then they're going to choose the one with the professional qualification because they'll be hitting the ground running. So this is this whole thing around the world hasn't stopped. It's just moved in a slightly different direction. And the advice for students is really to sort of use the time as best you can, so that when things do change, you're in the best possible position with regards to sort of job opportunities. But you can see that would be a real concern, can't you? Really, that's outside the studying, isn't it? Really, that's that affects your motivation, doesn't it? What's the point in studying if when I work, I do all this work, I come out the other side and I can't get a job? You can understand that.
And I like your point about don't waste time, because this is interesting. During this pandemic, a lot of organizations also introduce or organize webinar, and many organizations also, offer free upskilling program. And so I do see students, while waiting for results or while waiting for the next session to start, they actually obtain extra what we call micro-credential, like strategic thinking, problem solving. So this is really, you're very right indeed. Don't waste time, get yourself upskilled, get the best knowledge that you can. And as you mentioned about, the professional exams, and obviously, the employers would look at what, value propositions that you have, what additional value that you bring during the interview. So skills, professional qualifications and all that additional value that you bring with you whenever you attend interview, or you actually go for employment. So interesting. Don't waste time. Yeah.
Don't waste time. Just a side question, actually. It's one of the areas that we're quite interested in, and it seems, one of the things that this COVID environment is creating is getting people, it's accelerating thought processes. You mentioned there's the micro credentials and this idea that potentially the CV of the future, or you get a professional qualification and it remains a P. I've got one sat behind me on my wall and it looks exactly the same as when
right.
But these micro qualifications, I just wonder what they were like. They're a way of employers being able to judge a student's progress almost outside and beyond the professional qualification, aren't they? They're a continual track record of not just certification, but attitude, the fact that students have bothered to even put, while studying, oh, by the way, I did this, and then after studying, I went and I did this. Do employers look at that favourably in Malaysia? Is that something that you think will grow, or is already quite sort of prominent out there?
It's really very much so, because they are not just looking at your paper qualifications, they're also looking at your EQ. So a lot of employees and some of those, they actually have this kind of aptitude test. Even in MIA we do have some sort of aptitude test, and we look at their ability to write, their articulation, and the teamwork, willingness to learn. So a lot of employees are actually looking at this EQ, and this is where post qualification is good that they have this skill set, and it's good that they get familiarized with conversations, interpersonal relationship, that kind of soft skills, and those are really being looked at by the employers.
And as I say, it's not a once only, it's not a once only moment. Qualification's not like in the UK, a driving test and then you never do another one. It is and it's partly brought on, if COVID has taught us nothing, it's the speed of change. We've seen in the UK students literally on a Monday in a classroom, and by the Wednesday they're looking, as we are, Dr. Nur, talking to each other through a camera. something that they may have done before, but certainly not to the extent that we're kind of doing it now. Little bit of research for me, actually. One of the things that we're looking at, and you might have heard, have students given you any feedback? One of the things is lifting a classroom and putting it into a live online environment, which is to a certain extent similar to what we've got here, where you can see each other. Have students commented on the fact that are they doing day-long programs? Is, you know, because obviously doing a day online is very different to doing it in the classroom. Have you had any feedback as to students becoming more tired or not being concentrate, things like that?
Yeah, I think it's not only students, but even adult learners, you know, from our experience of handling training, we actually will probably just do half day, because when you are stuck in front of your computer or your tablet for the whole day, I think, you know, that there will be distractions, and the focus will probably, you know, be different, and they can be very tired. So most of the time that I observe, the classes would probably just be about few hours, and it'll be broken into two sessions, probably the morning and the afternoon sessions. So I think it is important for them to, you know, have a break in between, and so that they can refocus after the break. So normally, as I observe, the classes would not be the whole day continuous classes, because I think that would be very strenuous.
Yeah. And it is, and it's you know, there's, I think everybody's playing a little bit of a waiting game to see what sort of post-COVID is going to look like. I know, so it was announced about 2 weeks ago. Cambridge University said, you know, we are going to continue online for the rest of 21. A lot of the universities are obviously looking at September and planning. You know, we're Kaplan, we're looking at what social distancing looks like within a classroom. What are your thoughts on post-COVID in Malaysia? What do you think the learning space will look like? I was going to say a month, 2 months through, but I won't even go that far, Dr. Nurmazilah. I'll sort of say afterwards.
So one thing that we know very well now is that the vaccine is not there yet, and probably has not been much tested, and the vaccine is not available for public usage. So therefore the risks are still around. So based on that, we think that, you know, the online learning, online communication will continue. And we also would like to encourage people to look into online learning, looking at the benefit, and as compared to the physical learning. If you find that it's much beneficial, then perhaps it should be what we call a permanent norm. But again, this is where we need to look at the feedback and the results after certain time, how best this can be embedded, or perhaps weave with probably some different types of online delivery. So as at now, we've observed that even online delivery has started to change a bit, where there's a blend of different activities, and if you use certain type of platform, you can actually be sent to a breakout room for discussions, and you can be pulled back to the main room for a debrief. So I can see the evolution and the innovativeness in terms of conducting the online platform in order to achieve similar objectives that we have achieved with physical delivery. And that's interesting. But I believe a year or 2 years after that, we still need the human touch. So perhaps we still have the blend of physical and online, but it probably much lesser as what we had in the past.
Yeah, it's
so
strange.
that's my prediction. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting and surprise. I mean, I don't know that, you know, the learning space is global, isn't it? And all countries are looking. You know, I mean, the UK is a relatively small geographical space, so it's not difficult for students to get from A to B. But obviously, in other parts of the world, the online solution is quite attractive, and it's strange how it's forced us to consider what it would be like. Normally, in an industry, a disruptor comes along and challenges the status quo, and in some instances, that's somebody, you know, an Apple, you know, type organization comes along and then effectively changes how you look at, you know, mobile phones or Amazon with book buying and retail and all things like that. It's
Right.
very possible that COVID is the disruptor that has come along and has been the catalyst for people having to consider what the future could be, rather than asking, if you do a survey and you ask students, would you like to study online, or you ask lecturers, would you like to deliver online, you'll get a reaction. But the fact is, overnight, we were just thrust within it. And when you're in it, students and, I lectured Dr. Nurmazilah, so, it makes you start to explore, to make the best of what you've got. And then sometimes you suddenly go, hey, this is not too bad at all.
Yeah, it's not too bad at all. But you're right. Actually, the technology has been there, and perhaps we're so complacent that we are all doing it physical way, and despite the technology has been there, we probably use very little of those in the past. But when COVID came in, we have no choice, but we are probably we have to use it anyway. So that make us realize that, well, it's not too bad, and there are also positive opportunities that come with usage of more technology. For example, you are now in UK at 9 a.m. I'm in Malaysia at 4 p.m. and we are able to have this conversation, and which we probably have not done in the past.
No. And it's we've had I'm fingers crossed, we've only got about 4 minutes left, but fingers crossed we've had less technical issues, or should I say that the sort of Instagram platforms had less technical issues with Malaysia than anywhere that we've had. So it is amazing.
It's amazing.
Just we've talked a little bit about now, what's it going to look like. Just one comment on what you said. It's that this constant reference point between being back on a campus or back in a classroom. When you analyze something, it's quite hard to sort of get to see the logic for that, because there's pretty much, like you've suggested, if you do everything, use your imagination, particularly stuff, really exciting stuff around breakout rooms and one-to-ones and opening what we call open mic opportunities with students. So the technology is an exciting platform, and yet there's still a human element, which I have to say I share. But when I come to break it down into why, there's very little you can do in a classroom that you can't do in an online environment. But there's still a need for people to be together, to experience learning as a collective, isn't there, really?
Yes. That's where I envision that there'll be a blended process, perhaps, or a blended methodology where you do have online, but probably once a while you will meet each other. You'll meet with your tutor, with your lecturer, and that's probably to probably discuss and to connect much better. And one thing that is probably difficult to do it online, when you look at body language and things like that. So, when we are online, you probably just see the face, but you won't probably see more than that. So, obviously, yes. So, no, obviously, a combination of both.
Yeah. Okay, Dr. Nurmazilah, as ever, with time is going away. I always like to sort of end these sessions on what sort of advice or tips or hints for students from your perspective. What are your top thoughts, either pulling on what you've said, or what advice students out there, they're looking at a camera just now, or they're making notes, looking at a recorded lecture. What advice would you have for students just at the moment?
Yeah. So I do have a few takeaways to the students. First, I think they have to adapt to the new normal, wearing your mask, social distancing, keeping clean. So those are the health part of that. And the second one is actually to take opportunities, look at this as opportunity for you to enhance your skill, get the best out of your learning, manage your time properly, and manage expectations. And thirdly, is also to take care of your emotion, take care of your health, and always look positive, have a positive mindset, and be have a self control of your time and of your schedule and activities. So, and I know that, students being young and vibrant and innovative, they will find ways to overcome problems and to get the best out of the opportunities that they have.
Yeah, I know that this sort of you're quite keen on this sort of timetable, aren't you? It gives a discipline, and then and
Yes.
it's because it's very easy to let time slip away.
Mm.
Sometimes doing things that you think is valuable, but missing. One of the things we encourage students to do is to obviously practice questions. It's very easy to get caught up with, oh, I need to keep learning. I need to keep learning. I can't answer the question yet because I don't know enough. And it's really important for students almost to schedule in that timetable and say, right, wherever I am at this point, I'm going to do some questions. Because from a learning point, as you know, Doctor, this idea of it's not the test that makes the difference, it's the student thinking back on what they've learned cognitively in order to do it that really cements and makes that learning sort of so valuable and embeds it in so that you can sort of move forward.
Sorry, there's one last point that I would like to share. So coming back to schedule, and I think this probably from my experience where I learned like 30 years ago when I took my professional exam. So we have to plan in terms of how do we schedule our subjects and what do we have to achieve in a day. So when you plan ahead, you wouldn't feel that I do less or I do too much. So you plan so that you have optimum coverage in a day, and within your plan you need to give yourself a pat in the back, or you need to give yourself a bit of sweetener. So if I finish a few topics, then I can have a break and have my cookies or my latte, and then after an hour and I'll start again. So if you keep yourself in that momentum and schedule, you won't be burnout, you won't be stressed, but you just follow a schedule that fits, your lifestyle and fits your probably your energy. So but you have to do it similar, and you have to be consistent every day. And at the end of the day, you find that you've covered everything. So, yeah.
What a brilliant note to end, Doctor. Thank you very much for sharing your time. You're finishing. We're just starting our day. Malaysian Institute of Accountants. I suspect there's resources and things for students to look at if any questions that they might want to ask. There's areas that they can contact you. Other students can obviously look at the Kaplan website if you want to know about exams. That brings us to the end of this Instagram Live. Thank you all very much for following and listening. Next week we hope to have ACCA, but as ever, we'll keep you informed. And a real pleasure talking to you, Dr. Nur.